Hey guys, tonight we're diving into a story you probably won't survive without a little shake of disbelief. Because the way family dynamics can twist, especially when money and pride are involved, is something else. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to watch the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. If you're sitting somewhere in your living room, maybe the evening sun filtering in through a dusty window, or curled up on your balcony, feeling the cool breeze, this is for you. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's comfortably embark on tonight's journey. I walk into the living room, and there it is, the photograph. Not the kind you glance at and smile, the kind you study frame in your mind, like a snapshot of an entire family era. But something is off. The edges of the frame are pristine polished wood, the glass gleaming, but my own face is absent, removed, erased. Like some sort of bizarre magic trick that doesn't involve rabbits or hats, just years of memory and identity. My fingers hover over the glass tracing where my eyes should have been, and I can't help but feel that quiet creeping cold that accompanies betrayal. People often talk about generational divides in families, how the youngest or the newest spouse somehow reshapes the hierarchy, and I always thought it was exaggerated. Not tonight. Not with this silent declaration staring me in the face. There's a sense of calculated humiliation here, the type you read about in psychology articles, but never truly understand until it happens to you. Some studies suggest that altering visual family hierarchies, even subtly, can profoundly impact perceived social power. People still debate whether the effects last or if the forgotten face eventually fades into indifference. For me, indifference hasn't arrived yet. I step back, my shoes scuffing lightly against the polished floor, and suddenly I'm aware of the faint smell of lavender from the vase on the side table. Oddly comforting, like the house is mocking me with civility while plotting subtle torments. There's an odd cultural tradition I once read about in Eastern Europe where certain family portraits intentionally omit members as a ritualistic sign of exclusion, or mourning, a way of acknowledging absence without words. I never imagined experiencing anything remotely similar, not in my suburban living room. The air feels thick, charged with unsaid words, and the faint echo of a laugh I vaguely remember from a birthday years ago, one now tinged with cruelty. I run my hand along the back of the couch, feeling the faint indentation of cushions, imagining the conversations that happened while I wasn't supposed to be listening. My own children, my daughter, perhaps my son. Their faces now aligned in perfect symmetry, carefully curated to exclude me. It's surreal, their precision, the way the removal seems deliberate, almost artistic. I sit down, the leather cool against my skin, and try to process what just happened. Was it revenge, neglect, or an outright power play disguised as everyday family life? The psychology of exclusion fascinates me even as it stings. Researchers say that exclusion in familial settings triggers the same pain centers in the brain as physical injury. And if that's true, my head is throbbing in rhythm with a betrayal that's both literal and symbolic. My eyes wander to the sideboard where old photo albums lean like soldiers ready to testify. I flip one open, and there I am in every past image, smiling, laughing, part of the narrative that is now apparently rewritten. The act of erasure feels like more than disrespect. It's a statement about control, ownership, and perhaps greed. I notice small details that were always invisible, the way my granddaughter tilts her head in one picture, mimicking my smile, the way shadows fall across the tablecloth in another, hiding someone's slight smirk. Family dynamics are rarely simple. Often there's a hidden chessboard of gestures, glances, and omissions. Tonight I'm seeing it in 4K. 4K. I stand brushing my hands against my skirt, feeling the cool snap of fabric, and move toward the kitchen. The aroma of faintly burnt coffee mixes with vanilla from a candle that's been burning too long. I catch myself imagining the scene, someone deliberately choosing a day to put this new portrait in place, calculating my reaction, perhaps laughing quietly in another room, fully aware of the sting it would provoke. The absurdity of the situation strikes me like a prank gone psycho, or a social experiment disguised as domestic life. Oddly, somewhere in this tension, there's a story of resilience forming, one that I can almost feel solidifying in my chest. It's funny how minor objects suddenly carry monumental weight. A chair creaks as I sit at the breakfast nook, sunlight streaming across the worn tabletop. I think about inheritance laws I once skimmed over in a legal article. In some states, even adult children can be excluded from property distribution, and yet families find ways to bend the rules through silence manipulation or edited documentation. The legality isn't my primary concern yet. The human element, the betrayal, the subtle humiliation, the question of loyalty, overshadows contracts and clauses. People still debate whether intention or impact matters more when it comes to family power struggles. Tonight I'm living that debate firsthand. I pause, inhaling the faint scent of old paper from a nearby ledger, imagining the years of effort and savings that may now be in someone else's hands. It's a curious dichotomy, comfort and fear wrapped in the same domestic setting. I notice the ticking of the clock, a soft rhythm that seems almost sarcastic in its predictability. 3 light jokes come to mind, flitting like fireflies through a storm, the first about my missing face being the ultimate invisible woman. Cosplay, the second imagining a family meeting where they all pretend I never existed. And the third about how even my cat seems to glare at me with judgment for some past crime unknown. Humor, I remind myself, is survival in subtle doses. Finally, I move to the hallway mirror, catch my reflection, and notice the way my posture shifts when confronted with this silent erasure. I straighten, a subtle, almost imperceptible resolve forming. Perhaps tonight is less about rage and more about observation. Family dynamics, with all their quirks, rituals, and oddities, can be studied like a living organism. I can catalog gestures, note alliances, track glances, the everyday archaeology of betrayal. Somewhere in that process lies power patience and the quiet whisper of revenge waiting for its cue. So I sit back down, coffee, now lukewarm album in lap, and allow myself a small, darkly amused thought. They may have removed me from the photograph, but they cannot erase me from memory, from the quiet ledger of my presence, or from the inheritance secrets they underestimated. The journey has begun, and I know deep down this is only the opening scene. I step into the hallway, the polished wood cold under my feet, and the faint scent of citrus cleaner lingers in the air. It's strange how ordinary smells can anchor you to reality when everything else feels surreal. I pause outside the study door, my hand hovering over the knob, and I hear it, the soft murmur of voices, hushed but deliberate. It's a pitch-perfect blend of secrecy and anticipation, the kind that makes your stomach twist before you even know what's being said. My pulse quickens. Some people believe that overhearing family conversations is an invasion of trust, but when your own inheritance and dignity are on the line, curiosity feels like a survival instinct. I lean slightly against the doorframe and strain to hear. They're talking about me. Not directly, never directly, but the words are clear enough to sting. She has no idea about the clause in the will, one voice says. Another chuckles softly, the kind of laugh that has a sharp edge like a blade hidden beneath silk gloves. The words are casual, but the intent is anything but. They discuss figures, properties, and some odd cultural superstitions about passing on wealth, like keeping a coin from a parent's wallet under your pillow to ensure prosperity. I'd always thought those were quaint, harmless customs, but tonight they feel like taunts. I retreat a step, heart-hammering, mind-racing. People still debate whether eavesdropping in such moments is justified. It feels wrong and right at the same time, like standing in a storm and feeling the rain is both punishing and cleansing. I think about the dynamics in blended families, where stepchildren or distant cousins often wield quiet influence. Studies show that hidden alliances in family units can subtly shift power balances for decades, and suddenly, all the small moments, birthday gifts, ignored casual snubs, start to make sense. It's not just neglect, it's strategy. I walk to the living room window, the fabric of the curtains brushing my fingertips. Outside, the early evening sun casts long shadows across the garden, and I notice the way my granddaughter's swing moves slightly in the breeze, like it's echoing the unrest inside. Oddly, in some traditions, swings were used in rituals to ward off envy or misfortune in families, though it seems absurd to think about that while plotting subtle revenge. Yet in my mind, every little family quirk, every artifact feels loaded with significance tonight. I sit down on the edge of the sofa, folding my hands in my lap, and replay the words I overheard. They talk about secret bank accounts, hidden shares, and a clause I had never been told about, a legal loophole that could redefine everything. My stomach churns between fear and fascination. There's something intoxicating about knowing the truth before others realize you know, like holding a card nobody else can see. And yet there's an odd anxiety in it too. If I make a wrong move, the illusion of power they've maintained will shatter and I'll be left exposed. I glance around the room, noticing the small signs of domestic life that now feel like surveillance devices. The ticking clock, the pattern of shadows from the chandelier, even the faint hum of the refrigerator, it's all a stage, and I'm suddenly hyper-aware of my presence on it. A light joke flits through my mind. Maybe the cat has been the real mastermind all along, quietly judging and plotting with everyone else. I can't help a small bitter smile at the absurdity. Humor even dark is a lifeline. Pulling out my phone, I jot down notes about the voices. I heard a mix of facts and intuition. They've underestimated me. They think the removed photograph and hushed conversations will keep me passive, quiet, distracted. But the human mind is resilient. There's a strange psychological principle at work here. Exclusion often triggers heightened awareness and planning. People still debate whether this is adaptive or purely reactive, but in my case, it's both. I rise and walk toward the staircase, feeling the cool railing beneath my hand. I think about my late spouse, and a pang of both grief and clarity hits me. He was always meticulous with documents, with trusts, with letters tucked away in unexpected places. Somewhere buried in that careful organization lies the key to understanding the inheritance secrets they whispered about. A long-forgotten cousin once told me about a hidden ledger, one that had survived decades of neglect and oversight. Could it be real? Could it be my lifeline through this labyrinth of betrayal? I reach the top landing, pausing to catch my breath. The sun has slipped lower, casting warm golden streaks across the hallway, illuminating dust motes that dance like tiny witnesses. Family dinners, arguments, quiet conversations, all past and present, seem to converge in this moment. I remember a quirky practice I read about in a small Mediterranean town. Families would write letters to themselves about inheritance intentions, seal them, and only open after death as a way to prevent disputes. I've never seen one, but suddenly the idea feels almost prophetic. I move toward the study, hesitant but determined. Every step feels amplified in the silence of the house. My hand hovers over the doorknob, remembering that cruel laugh I heard years ago during a sibling rivalry over a minor inheritance. A laugh that suddenly seems relevant tonight. I push the door open just slightly enough to peer in. Papers scatter across the desk, legal folders stacked haphazardly, and the faint scent of ink and aged paper hits me. This is where secrets live, where whispers become documentation. I step inside, careful not to disturb anything, and allow myself a moment to absorb the scene. The combination of silence and latent tension is dizzying. There's a factual truth about family power, plays the ones who act quietly, who manipulate without overt confrontation, often emerge with the greatest control. And here I am, poised to navigate that labyrinth. My pulse slows slightly as I realize I've already begun my silent strategy observation note-taking patience. People still debate whether subtlety or bold action is the most effective tool in family disputes. Tonight, I plan to wield both. Finally, I take a deep breath and sit at the edge of the desk, fingers lightly brushing a folder labeled Trust Documents Confidential. The weight of the family's secrets, their whispers, their silent plotting. It all feels tangible now, almost like a living entity. I can almost hear the ghost of their hushed voices echoing in the room, daring me to make a mistake, daring me to react without thought. A quiet smirk forms. They've underestimated me, and that I realize is often the first mistake in any long-standing family drama. I close the study door gently behind me, letting the faint click echo like a starting gun. The house feels different now, as if it's shifting subtly around me, acknowledging that I've entered a space of discovery, of potential reckoning. My mind loops over the conversations I overheard, the hushed tones, the barely suppressed laughter. They think I don't know. They think I'm still frozen silent, a figure to be manipulated or ignored. But there's a long-lost cousin I haven't seen in years, who once promised to be an ally, someone with knowledge that could tip the scales in my favor. And tonight I need that ally. I grab my phone and dial the number I've kept tucked away for just such a scenario. The line rings once, twice, and then a familiar voice picks up. It's cautious, careful, tinged with curiosity. "I thought I'd never hear from you," my cousin says, and I can hear the subtle weight of years and shared history in that tone. I explain quickly in hushed bursts about the photograph, the overheard discussion, and the inheritance whispers. The cousin pauses processing and then offers a lead, a folder hidden for decades, containing documents that may outline exactly what I'm entitled to. People still debate whether long-lost relatives are trustworthy in these situations, especially when money and family pride are involved. I don't have the luxury of assuming anything. I take notes while my cousin speaks each detail a small thread I can follow. Oddly enough, the conversation also reveals some fringe facts about inheritance practices, how certain old laws allowed assets to be quietly shifted to those deemed morally upright by family consensus, sometimes bypassing standard legal channels entirely. The concept is archaic, almost absurd, yet in this family it seems to still hold invisible sway. After the call, I pace the hallway, letting the information settle. The scent of polished wood and vanilla from earlier still lingers, almost comforting, a subtle reminder that the world outside this drama continues. I glance toward the staircase, noting how shadows stretch and bend across the carpet. In family homes, architecture itself often becomes part of the unspoken narrative, the way rooms are placed, who gets the sunny spot, who gets the view of the street. It's trivial to outsiders, but here, each detail matters. I move to the living room again, picking up an old ledger from the side table. Its cover is worn, edges frayed, but it's a tangible connection to the past, a tactile reminder that family history is more than whispers. It's documented in ink, paper, and memory. I flip through the pages, spotting familiar handwriting and small annotations. Odd customs jump out in some cultures. Heirs would leave notes to themselves or family members, codifying intentions for wealth distribution decades before anyone could contest them. People still debate whether these practices are ethically sound or merely clever loopholes to preserve family power, but tonight they feel like lifelines. Sitting down, I allow myself a small, private chuckle. There's humor in the absurdity, the idea that someone decades ago meticulously recorded secrets that I now have the chance to uncover. One light joke crosses my mind. Perhaps the family ghost is rolling its eyes at the drama we've all created. Another thought hits this one sharper. They've always underestimated me, assuming silence equates to submission. How wrong they are. The third joke is about the cat, my constant judgmental companion, as if even it knows the family's true hierarchy and chooses to silently mock us all. I open the ledger, carefully scanning entries, annotations, and references to accounts I had long forgotten. Each page tells a story, a mixture of financial accounting and subtle messaging, a way to communicate across generations without ever speaking aloud. It's fascinating, really, how families encode power and loyalty in plain sight, expecting only those who pay attention to understand. The realization hits me. Understanding is power, and observation is the first tool of survival in these quiet domestic wars. I notice a particular folder tucked inside the ledger, one that feels older, more deliberate. The paper is thick, yellowed at the edges, stamped with symbols I vaguely recognize from family seals. Oddly, these seals resemble a ritualistic practice I once read about, used to validate the authenticity of documents in small aristocratic families. The ceremony was elaborate, almost theatrical, yet here it exists quietly tucked away, waiting for someone who notices. People still debate whether these seals have legal weight or are purely ceremonial, but tonight I'm treating them as both. I carry the folder to the desk, feeling the weight of history and expectation. The room is silent except for the faint hum of the ceiling fan, a soft, almost meditative rhythm. I sit open the folder and begin to read. Names, dates, stipulations, all laid out in meticulous detail. My pulse quickens. This isn't just about money. It's about acknowledgement, recognition, and rectifying the erasure I saw in the photograph. Every clause feels like a small victory in advance, a prelude to the confrontations and negotiations to come. Even as I read, I think about family dynamics in broader terms, the ways power shifts subtly, how memory and omission become tools, and how trust is often contingent on a mix of fear and respect. Here in these pages, I see patterns repeating across generations, each one echoing my own experience. The odd and fascinating part is the human element, the quirks, the rituals, the silent agreements that define loyalty. These are as real as any contract, as binding as any will, and understanding them is crucial. I lean back in my chair, the folder open before me, and let the weight of what I've discovered settle. My cousin's guidance, the hidden ledger, the subtle cues I've observed all converge into a single realization: I'm not powerless. Observation, patience, and the careful application of knowledge are my weapons. And while the family may believe they've orchestrated my exclusion perfectly, they've unknowingly handed me the tools to navigate and eventually reclaim what was unjustly withheld. I close my eyes briefly, imagining the next steps, the careful conversations, the strategic reveals the quiet satisfaction of watching the first ripples of realization spread among them. And beneath it all, a gentle, almost imperceptible thrill, the power of being underestimated. Tonight, the story has turned subtly but irrevocably in my favor. The morning light filters through the curtains, painting golden stripes across the floor, and I realize just how long I've been awake, pacing, thinking, and strategizing. Today isn't just any day, it's my birthday, though. The family seems determined to pretend otherwise. There's a strange, almost ritualistic pattern to these omissions. People forget or deliberately overlook important dates to assert dominance or instill subtle guilt. I've read studies showing that overlooked birthdays, especially for older family members, correlate strongly with feelings of invisibility and decreased emotional well-being. It's subtle, but it cuts deeper than you'd think. People still debate whether such acts are malicious or mere negligence, but tonight, the distinction feels irrelevant. I make coffee in the kitchen, the bitter aroma grounding me. Each sip reminds me of small pleasures that don't require validation from anyone else. The kettle hisses steam, curling like a small flag of rebellion. My eyes drift to the table where cards usually sit, handwritten, thoughtful, full of warmth. There's none, not a single note envelope or whispered acknowledgement. Instead, there's a perfectly ordinary stack of unopened mail, as if the universe itself is conspiring to render me invisible on my special day. Oddly, in some cultures, ignoring a birthday is considered a way to symbolically release a person from familial control, though the ethical implications are debated endlessly. Tonight, I feel the weight of that cultural quirk pressing down on me. I walk to the living room, tracing the lines of the photograph that started all of this, the one where I am absent. It's almost comical if it weren't so sharp, so cutting everyone else is aligned perfectly. Smiles, calibrated shadows falling in meticulous harmony, as if the photographer were conspiring with my own family. I suppress a small, bitter laugh. Humor, after all, is survival. One light joke flits across my mind. Maybe they're practicing to have a family portrait exhibition titled, "Who Didn't Matter?" A second, perhaps even the cat will be asked to pose for my replacement in future photographs. A third, I imagine my reflection sighing, rolling its eyes at the absurdity of it all. The doorbell rings, slicing through the silence like a sudden challenge. I glance through the peephole. It's the delivery of flowers obviously meant for someone else, addressed with my name, but signed ambiguously. A subtle attempt at civility, perhaps a performative gesture meant to mask the neglect. I open the door, examining the blooms. Red roses, their petals perfectly arranged, almost too perfect. The note reads, "Happy Birthday," from someone who cares, ambiguous, distant, and faintly insulting in its detachment. I place the flowers on the counter, their fragrance filling the room with irony and expectation. I consider the psychology of birthdays in family dynamics. Research indicates that celebrating or ignoring milestones can communicate power hierarchies, hidden resentments, or unspoken alliances. Some anthropologists have noted similar practices in remote societies where ritualized recognition or its absence serves as a social compass. Tonight, I feel every one of those lessons keenly. The absence of acknowledgement is louder than any greeting, a statement of intent etched into domestic space. I pour another cup of coffee and let the warmth seep into my hands, grounding me. The morning drifts into afternoon, and the tension simmers like a quiet storm. I review the hidden ledger I discovered earlier, cross-referencing names, dates, and allocations with mental notes I've jotted down. The documents hint at subtleties, clauses, and exceptions designed to protect certain family members while subtly sidelining others. Odd legal practices pop up, like the inclusion of moral character clauses in inheritance, common in some European traditions, where the deceased could legally favor heirs based on perceived virtue. People still debate whether such clauses are enforceable or just symbolic, but tonight they feel very real. I hear the faint shuffle of footsteps above. My daughter, I assume, though I cannot be certain. She has always had a knack for appearing silently observing, calculating. The way she moves, the small weight, shifts, the precise click of her shoes on the wooden floor, it's all deliberate. Perhaps she knows. Perhaps she senses the storm I've been quietly preparing. It's a dance of observation and strategy, and for the first time, I feel fully equipped to engage. I smile slightly, realizing the game has shifted. They may have ignored my birthday, but they cannot ignore the quiet power that knowledge confers. I move toward the front window, watching the street below. Neighbors go about mundane routines, oblivious to the undercurrents swirling within my home. There's a strange comfort in that normalcy, a reminder that life continues regardless of betrayal. I notice a small bird perched on a fence, tilting its head, seemingly aware of my presence, yet unafraid. Perhaps nature understands the subtle dramas of patience and resilience better than humans do. I think about how grandparents often observe, endure, and quietly influence family outcomes without overt confrontation. Their power is subtle but profound, often leaving lasting marks over generations. By evening, the air in the house thickens with unspoken words and faint resentment. I sit at the edge of the sofa album and ledger in hand reviewing past birthdays and celebrations. Patterns emerge the way attention has been selectively distributed, who received notes, gifts, acknowledgement, and who did not. Small injustices amplified over decades, forming a quiet narrative of exclusion. Oddly, in some families, these patterns are codified almost ritually. Seating arrangements, gift hierarchies, and even conversation protocols are carefully observed to maintain control. People still debate whether these practices foster harmony or perpetuate resentment. I have my own answer now. Night falls, and with it comes the hushed expectation of family gatherings, subtle interrogations disguised as casual dinner conversation. I prepare myself mentally, noting gestures, planned responses, and even the timing of my words. Humor remains my shield, a light joke about the cat's judgmental stare, a second about imagining a birthday cake that screams, "You were forgotten," and a third about me sending a mock thank you card to the void. Patience, observation, and the strategic use of humor, these are my weapons in the quiet war of domestic politics. Finally, I sit back, letting the dim light wash over the living room, absorbing the implications of a birthday, ignored a photograph altered, and an inheritance that has been whispered about but never revealed fully. The interplay of omission, subtle humiliation, and hidden knowledge has created a stage for the unfolding drama. And while the family believes they've minimized me, erased me from the story, and silenced my recognition, I know that awareness is the first step toward reclaiming agency. Tonight I let that knowledge settle, like a gentle pulse beneath the tension. The morning after my overlooked birthday arrives quietly, with the sun spilling soft, pale light across the hallway, illuminating dust motes like tiny floating witnesses. I make my way to the kitchen, the tiles cool under my feet, and brew coffee, the familiar bitterness grounding me. Today feels different. There's a tension in the air that's palpable, like a cord stretched taut, ready to snap. I can sense it in the quiet house, in the careful spacing of furniture, in the lingering aroma of the flowers that were ambiguously delivered yesterday. Subtle cues like these often carry more weight than words in family dynamics, signaling alliances, rivalries, and intentions that remain unspoken but understood. People still debate whether such environmental cues actually influence behavior or if we simply project meaning onto them, but tonight they scream clarity. A soft knock at the door pulls me from my thoughts. I glance at the clock, slightly later than expected. It's the lawyer. I had almost forgotten the appointment in the swirl of the previous day's revelations. The presence of an impartial adult, someone versed in legalities, feels like a pivot point, a chance to translate whispered secrets into actionable knowledge. The lawyer enters, briefcase in hand, the faint smell of leather and ink announcing authority before words even pass. I invite them to sit the chair, creaking softly, and I realize that the room has become a stage for unfolding truths. Oddly, in some small towns, lawyers were once seen as family arbiters, mediating conflicts quietly to avoid public scandal. People still debate whether that role was impartial or skewed toward wealthier relatives, and I feel that ambiguity settling over us. The lawyer sets the briefcase on the desk and opens it with deliberate care, revealing neatly stacked folders and envelopes, documents that carry decades of familial weight. I lean forward, curiosity sharpened, and they begin to outline the situation. My inheritance, the clauses in the will, and the historical context of certain trust allocations that had never been shared with me. My pulse quickens, not with fear, but with the clarity that comes from finally seeing the chessboard. I notice an odd clause one that references moral discretion in the distribution of assets, a practice that has curious historical precedents in several European legal traditions. It's fascinating, really, that these antiquated customs still subtly influence modern domestic affairs. As they continue, I jot notes, careful not to interrupt. The conversation is filled with pauses, reflective glances, and subtle reassurances. Humor creeps in to balance tension. I imagine my cat judging the documents as though they were her property, my fingers itching to hand her a pencil and let her scribble amendments. A second thought, perhaps the family designed the entire will so complicatedly, knowing only a curious outsider or forgotten relative would decipher it. And a third, what if the photograph erasure was intended as a diversion, a smokescreen against the very clarity I now hold? These musings give me small, private satisfaction, a sense of control in a space that has often felt hostile. The lawyer pauses, pointing to a particular folder, their finger tracing a line in the margins that had gone unnoticed by the casual observer. This section, they explain, outlines your entitlement under a clause that most families overlook. It's a protective measure from your late spouse's foresight. My heart tightens slightly. Protective, yes, but overlooked intentionally by those who would benefit if I remained in the dark. I note the subtle irony. They manipulated visibility, confidence, and timing to assert dominance. It's an elegant cruelty, the kind that historians and psychologists alike study when analyzing family power dynamics. People still debate whether intent or outcome matters more in such manipulations. Tonight, I feel both. I pause for a moment, sipping coffee, letting the information sink in. The documents suggest subtle alliances, financial instruments hidden in plain sight, and options previously unknown. The power of knowledge, I realize, is immediate and intoxicating. Subtle gestures like the careful wording of trusts and the strategic arrangement of assets carry influence without overt confrontation. Odd customs, such as using secret ledger notes to convey moral discretion across generations, reveal how families encode values alongside wealth. This duality fascinates me, ethics and inheritance intertwined in ways both charming and devious. The conversation takes a reflective pause, allowing me to ask questions, probe possibilities, and clarify ambiguities. Each answer sheds light on decisions made decades ago, decisions that shape my family's understanding of loyalty, obligation, and recognition. I think about past birthdays, ignored photograph erasures, and quiet glances across dinner tables, now framed not just as slights, but as strategic moves in a complex domestic game. I allow a small, dry laugh. The absurdity of family theatrics played out over generations is both hilarious and infuriating. Humor, even subtle, is essential to maintaining sanity in this maze of loyalty and betrayal. Finally, we review the practical implications. Accessing certain accounts, filing notices, and strategically timing confrontations all fall into place like pieces of a puzzle I had long suspected existed but never fully understood. The lawyer offers subtle guidance, not solutions, encouraging me to navigate with discretion. There's a profound lesson here. Knowledge without careful action is wasted energy. Oddly, in some cultures, family elders would leave verbal instructions to be interpreted contextually, a practice intended to test attentiveness and judgment. People still debate whether these measures foster responsibility or sow confusion. Tonight, I embrace both interpretations. As the lawyer packs up, I feel a sense of quiet satisfaction. The initial shock of erasure, the whispered conversations, the overlooked birthday, all of it has brought me here, poised, informed, and ready to engage the next phase of this drama with clarity. I glance at the photograph again, tracing the empty space with my finger. They may have erased me from the frame, ignored my day, and whispered behind doors, but they cannot erase what I now know. Observation, knowledge, and patience have become my allies. I close the door behind the lawyer, letting silence reclaim the house. The air feels lighter, though charged with anticipation. I sit down with the ledger and notes, mapping out strategies and next steps, blending humor with reflection. One light joke, imagining my daughter's face when I reveal knowledge she assumed I lacked. A second, picturing the cat supervising proceedings, a silent arbiter of justice. A third, envisioning the family reunion photographs of the future where erasure has no effect because awareness cannot be removed. I sip coffee again, grounding myself in both reality and the subtle thrill of forthcoming revelations. Dinner that evening feels like walking onto a stage set for a play I didn't audition for, but one I now own in ways they haven't realized. The table is immaculate cutlery, gleaming glasses, catching the warm glow of the chandelier. Everyone is in place, my children, my daughter-in-law, and the faintest shimmer of unease that I suspect comes from underestimating me. I sit down slowly, letting my presence register. In family studies, experts note that subtle shifts in posture, gaze, or timing at meals can communicate power without a single word. Tonight, I intend to use all of them. People still debate whether these micro-gestures are intentional or merely subconscious. Either way, the effect is palpable. The conversation starts lightly small talk about the day, the weather, and upcoming errands. I listen, observing, cataloging. One light joke flits through my mind. Perhaps someone will ask if I enjoyed my forgotten birthday, and I'll smile, pretending innocence, while feeling the quiet surge of control. Another, I imagine a mental scoreboard, tallying alliances and sly glances. A third, imagining the cat perched atop a cabinet judging us all, silently adds a tiny personal relief to the tension. Humor, even internal, is my lifeline in this calculated minefield. As the meal progresses, thinly veiled jabs emerge like carefully set traps. My daughter-in-law comments casually about financial planning, mentioning accounts I now know are tied to my inheritance. She smiles, unaware that I've already reviewed every detail that the secret ledgers and legal counsel have prepared me for this very moment. Her words are a blend of subtle intimidation and assumed ignorance on my part. Oddly, in some cultures, women of the house wielded this type of conversational influence to gauge knowledge and loyalty before formally revealing intentions. People still debate whether these rituals are manipulative or simply traditional checks. Tonight, I feel both sides. I respond lightly, subtly, steering the dialogue toward topics I've mastered: property, family history, even past holidays. Each comment is measured, infused with just enough knowledge to unsettle without revealing full advantage. Observing their reactions, the faint tightening around my son's eyes, the careful smirk of my daughter-in-law, I recognize a pattern. The power they assumed was theirs has begun to shift. Family dinners, apparently mundane, are often arenas for quiet power displays. Tonight I realize I am playing and winning on multiple fronts. At one point, someone mentions a distant relative and the possibility of gifting them a portion of an estate. I smile internally, recalling the hidden clauses in the will. Subtle legal instruments, small annotations, and forgotten letters suddenly feel like secret weapons. It's fascinating, really, the interplay of formal law and domestic cunning. Some odd inheritance practices even allowed for conditional gifts, where discretion and morality played a role in determining final outcomes. People still debate the fairness of these clauses, but in tonight's context, they are a key strategic advantage. I notice minor behaviors: who reaches for bread first, who glances at their watch, who nods quickly or hesitates in response to remarks. These micro-gestures, psychologists note, reveal unconscious hierarchies and alliances. Oddly, a study once suggested that seating arrangement alone can dictate influence over family decision-making, and as I survey the table, I realize my position, both physical and metaphorical, is stronger than it appears. One light joke, imagining myself as a general, silently commanding the troops of subtle gestures and whispered compliance. Another, picturing the cat as an unappointed advisor. A third, the faint idea of labeling each micro-expression with a point system in my mental ledger. As dessert arrives, conversation turns toward weekend plans and shared responsibilities. I listen carefully, noting where information is being withheld or distorted, and where assumptions about my knowledge are made. Every phrase, every pause is data. Oddly enough, some anthropologists observe similar behaviors in small tribal communities, where meals double as strategic gatherings to assess loyalty and status. People still debate whether such parallels are valid across modern domestic settings. Tonight I feel the connection keenly. Halfway through the meal, a minor faux pas occurs. My son spills a drink slightly, and a quick glance from my daughter-in-law suggests annoyance almost imperceptible. Yet I catch it. A detail small, meaningless in isolation, but part of the mosaic of control and expectation. I respond with quiet calm, offering a napkin and a smile, letting the gesture signal both courtesy and observation. There's power in restraint. It's a lesson often noted in social psychology. Subtle acts of civility can demonstrate confidence and command attention more effectively than overt confrontation. The final course is served a simple fruit tart, the sweetness undercut by the faint bitterness of unspoken tension. I allow myself to enjoy it slowly, each bite measured, internalizing the subtle shifts around me. The room is quiet in ways that speak louder than conversation, micro-reactions, small movements, the almost imperceptible leaning in or pulling back, all part of the silent dialogue of familial power. Oddly, some families still maintain ritualistic observation during meals, using behavior as an unspoken form of inheritance policing. People still debate whether these rituals are archaic or pragmatically enduring. Tonight, they feel both. As the meal concludes, I push my plate gently forward, letting the last crumbs mark an end to this round of engagement. I rise, feeling the subtle acknowledgement of presence, the shift from passive observation to active influence. Humor flits through my mind once more, imagining the cat taking meticulous notes on family strategy, another picturing a hypothetical future photograph where no one dares exclude me, a third silently counting micro-victories, each one stacking toward eventual resolution. The evening has been a lesson, a test, and an opening salvo in a larger campaign that only I fully understand. After clearing the table, I retreat to the study, the faint scent of coffee lingering in the air, mingling with the ever-present aroma of old books and polished wood. The quiet hum of the ceiling fan creates a soft backdrop, almost like an invitation to reflection. I sit at the desk, the hidden folder from my cousin open before me, and begin to sift through the delicate papers tucked inside. There's a letter yellowed with age addressed to me from my late spouse, a voice from the past reaching across years, whispers of secrets, intentions, and guidance I never knew existed. The feeling is surreal, like shaking hands with history itself. The handwriting is deliberate, careful, each stroke imbued with meaning. I can almost hear the cadence of their voice in my mind, the rhythm of words carefully chosen to convey wisdom, caution, and above all, foresight. People still debate whether such posthumous letters serve more as personal therapy for the writer or as tangible instruments for heirs. Tonight it matters little. It is guidance, and in my hands it becomes power. There's an odd historical precedent for this practice. Some cultures considered letters written to future heirs as sacred instruments, ensuring continuity of intention and fairness across generations. The thought both comforts and energizes me, as I read details emerge that connect the photograph, erasure, hushed conversations, and the ignored birthday. My late spouse anticipated the subtle power plays, the quiet manipulations, and embedded instructions within the documents to protect me from exclusion. It's a remarkable orchestration, a combination of love, foresight, and strategic cunning. Odd practices like hidden clauses and annotated margins hint at a profound understanding of human behavior. People still debate whether moral discretion clauses in inheritance are ethical, but I now see the rationale. They safeguard both assets and values. The letter reveals the existence of additional documents, small yet critical property deeds, bank account allocations, and notes on family dynamics that could shift the perception of power. I feel a thrill, the kind that comes with uncovering a secret map leading to treasures overlooked. I glance up at the photograph that started this chain of realization, and for the first time I feel a quiet sense of alignment. What was taken in the frame is being returned through knowledge. There's humor in the irony, a small private smile as I imagine the family's surprise when the first moves are revealed. I take a deep breath, the paper crisp under my fingers, and allow myself a brief mental sketch of the sequence ahead. Observation, first strategy, second confrontation, third. Each document, each annotation becomes a tool, a lever, a piece in a delicate machinery of familial negotiation. Oddly, anthropologists studying inheritance practices note that written directives often serve dual purposes: legal authority and psychological reinforcement. People still debate whether their primary effect is practical or symbolic. Tonight, I understand it as both. The letters mention the importance of timing. Revealing certain facts too soon could destabilize relationships, while waiting too long risks missed opportunities. It's a balancing act, a strategic dance that I now feel prepared to execute. I review previous events, the birthday, the photograph, the hushed conversations, and see patterns emerge, subtle indicators of priorities and alliances. Humor once again lightens the tension. One mental joke about how my cat would have been a better lawyer, one imagining a boardroom-style strategy session in my living room, and a third picturing the family caught off guard at the next gathering. I begin to cross-reference names mentioned in the letter with the documents from the ledger. Small discrepancies, annotations, and footnotes reveal intentions, contingencies, and moral expectations placed upon family members. Inheritance is never just about money. It's about influence, memory, and the subtle enforcement of values across time. Odd historical rituals suggest that heirs who demonstrated attentiveness to details were often favored, subtly encouraging mindfulness and loyalty. People still debate whether this promotes fairness or breeds anxiety. I feel both as I carefully read each line. As evening falls, the room is bathed in a soft amber glow from the desk lamp. Shadows stretch across the walls, elongating the room and creating an almost cinematic quality. I imagine each family member moving through their evening, unaware of the revelations I now hold. Each piece of knowledge, each carefully noted clause, represents a shift in leverage. Humor flits through my mind again, imagining the family reunion photographs in which my presence once erased now carries an almost invisible aura of authority. Another joke, the cat perched on the ledger, eyes narrowed in judgment. A third picturing my daughter-in-law attempting subtle manipulation, unaware that I already anticipate her every move. Finally, I place the letter back in the folder, aligning it perfectly with the ledger, the papers crisp and organized. The combination of past foresight and present discovery feels empowering. I sit back, letting the quiet thrill of anticipation settle like a warm blanket. The interplay of observation, historical insight, and strategic patience has transformed a moment of personal slight into a rich tapestry of opportunity. People still debate whether true power lies in wealth, knowledge, or psychological acuity. Tonight, I feel the convergence of all three. The house is quiet, but my mind races, connecting dots, planning moves, and savoring the subtle satisfaction of anticipation. The photograph on the wall, once a symbol of exclusion, now serves as a reminder of resilient strategy and the enduring weight of legacy. Each ledger entry and hidden clause is a thread in the fabric of control and recognition, carefully woven to withstand oversight in time. And as I sit there absorbing it all, I understand a fundamental truth. They may have erased me from a frame, but they cannot erase the insight, preparation, and foresight I now wield. The next morning I wake to the soft hum of the ceiling fan and the faint golden light spilling across the living room. A sense of anticipation hangs in the air, thick enough to taste, as if the house itself is aware that a turning point has arrived. Today, I focus on the will and its secret clause, a section that had been whispered about behind closed doors but never revealed to me. The documents lie spread across the desk ledger, open letters aligned carefully, like soldiers awaiting orders. I take a deep breath, feeling the weight of history, trust, and the subtle power embedded in those few lines of text. Family dynamics are complex, and scholars note that legal clauses hidden within wills can shape behavior long before the money ever changes hands. People still debate whether the ethics of such hidden clauses are sound, but tonight the morality feels secondary to strategy. I reread the clause slowly, noting each word, each comma, and the seemingly innocuous instructions that could pivot the balance of control. The document stipulates that certain portions of the inheritance are contingent upon observance of moral character and attentiveness to family traditions. Oddly, in some cultures, moral clauses were used not just to protect assets, but to subtly enforce desired behavior across generations, creating a system of incentives that few ever questioned. People still debate whether this is manipulation or a form of guided stewardship, and I find myself leaning into both interpretations simultaneously. The letters, ledger, and clauses converge, revealing the meticulous thought my late spouse had put into protecting me and ensuring fairness, even when others tried to rewrite the narrative. I sip coffee, feeling its warmth seep into my chest, grounding me. Each document, each annotation becomes a puzzle piece in a map of hidden power. The weight of foresight hums in my fingertips. I think back to the family photograph, the birthday ignored, and the whispered conversations that triggered this exploration. Every slight, every omission now takes on new meaning. There's humor in it, a wry acknowledgement of human nature. One joke flits through my mind, imagining the cat as the family's hidden executor, judging everyone with impeccable precision. Another picturing a future gathering, where my knowledge is so complete that even the slightest hesitation is noticeable. A third, imagining the household objects themselves conspiring with me, holding secrets of their own. I begin organizing a plan, mentally mapping each interaction and potential confrontation. The clause is delicate, but its wording provides leverage. I must proceed with caution, revealing knowledge at the right moment to maximize both awareness and impact. Scholars of family law and psychology note that timing is often more critical than the content itself. The same revelation can empower or destabilize depending on context. People still debate whether this is manipulation or mere prudence. And tonight I embrace the ambiguity. As I sort the papers, I notice subtle annotations, tiny symbols, marginalia, and underlined phrases that suggest my late spouse anticipated both human fallibility and familial intrigue. There's a faint thrill in recognizing that this foresight has now become my shield. I pause, noting the precise way words are chosen to encourage reflection, honesty, and adherence to principle, even across generations. The intersection of legal language, ethical guidance, and subtle psychological conditioning fascinates me. Some odd historical traditions involved similar preemptive planning. Families would leave coded instructions for heirs using symbols and letters to communicate intentions long after death. People still debate whether these methods were effective or unnecessarily convoluted. Tonight they are both effective and necessary. I close my eyes briefly, recalling past family events, the ignored birthday, the photograph, the hushed conversations over coffee pots and dinner tables. I see patterns emerge, alliances, silent hierarchies, and gestures that once seemed inconsequential. Now they are indicators, signposts to navigate this intricate web. Humor creeps in again. One joke about imagining the family as pawns on a chessboard, another about the cat making a judgmental side commentary, and a third about my own reflection, noting how even my posture conveys newfound authority. These light interludes stabilize the tension, keeping the mind agile and the strategy flexible. I begin to cross-reference the clause with other documents, the ledger, previous correspondences, and recently discovered letters. Each connection reveals nuances, contingencies, and implicit rules that others had assumed would remain hidden. Some clauses reference cultural rituals like offering symbolic gifts or performing specific acknowledgments of respect practices that seem archaic but are subtly binding. People still debate whether these rituals were primarily legalistic or psychological, yet in the present, they wield real influence over perception and behavior. The integration of ethics tradition and legal structure is both elegant and formidable. After hours of careful study, I pause to stretch, glancing out the window at the fading light. Shadows from the trees stretch across the floor, their slow movement a gentle reminder that time continues, even as I navigate this controlled, deliberate world. The living room, once the site of subtle slights and minor humiliations, now feels like a command center, a place of knowledge and quiet power. Observing this, I feel an almost cinematic sense of agency. Oddly, social psychologists note that environments themselves can influence confidence and assertiveness, particularly when laden with history and significance. People still debate the magnitude of this effect, but tonight it is undeniable. I prepare notes outlining potential moves and expected reactions. The clause allows for influence without confrontation, subtlety without obvious aggression. The power is both legal and psychological. It is leverage, patience, and timing combined. Humor continues to soften the tension, imagining my daughter-in-law realizing her assumptions are flawed, picturing my son's slight gasp at a revelation, and contemplating the cat perched on the ledger silently approving my strategy. This mental play sustains me, ensuring clarity even in the delicate web of familial dynamics. As night falls, I sit back reviewing my mental map. The secret clause, once a mysterious footnote in a dusty will, has transformed into a blueprint. I understand potential reactions, the hierarchy of influence, and the subtle interventions needed to assert rightful presence and recognition. The house is quiet, but I feel the energy of strategy unfolding, the tension of anticipation, and the promise of agency finally realized. People still debate whether knowledge alone suffices in navigating family power struggles or whether action is ultimately required. Tonight I know both are essential. Finally, I organize the documents, carefully aligning letters, ledger pages, and the will. The tactile act is grounding the rhythm, almost meditative. Humor flits once more, imagining the family reunion with these revelations subtly in play, a quiet smile playing across my lips. Another joke, picturing the cat meticulously documenting everyone's reactions. A third imagining a future photograph where my presence is not just acknowledged, but subtly commanding. The clause has shifted from secret to instrument, from passive protection to active leverage. I sit back, letting the significance sink in, a quiet smile, acknowledging that while they may have erased me from images, they cannot erase my strategic awareness. The next morning arrives with a pale, diffused light barely illuminating the living room, where I've spent hours studying and organizing the documents. There's a sense of anticipation, like the calm before a storm, but this storm is deliberate, controlled, and entirely mine to orchestrate. I sip my coffee slowly, letting the warmth anchor me, each sip a quiet affirmation of presence, patience, and the subtle power of knowledge. Family dynamics. I reflect are a complex interplay of emotion, strategy, and observation. People still debate whether awareness alone is sufficient to shift power, or if direct confrontation is always necessary. Tonight, I am testing both. I gather the documents, the hidden letter from my late spouse, the ledger, and the annotated will with its secret clause. Each piece is a thread in the intricate web of strategy, a map of influence waiting to be activated. I set them neatly on the desk, aligning the pages, tracing the margin notes, and reviewing the subtleties of language. The clause itself is delicate, a mixture of moral expectation, conditional entitlement, and historical precedent. Oddly, in certain European traditions, clauses like this were used to enforce ethical behavior in heirs, while simultaneously ensuring the family fortune remained consolidated. People still debate whether such clauses encourage integrity or simply give surviving relatives leverage to manipulate outcomes. Tonight, the answer is clear. They provide me leverage. I intend to use wisely. As I sit reviewing the documents, I hear the faint footsteps of my daughter-in-law descending the stairs. She believes she can maintain the upper hand, her subtle smirks and calculated gestures intended to convey confidence. But she has underestimated the quiet diligence that knowledge brings. Observation, I remind myself, is often the first and most powerful tool in any confrontation. Small details, the tilt of her head, the timing of her steps, the brief hesitation in opening the door offer more insight than hours of conversation. Odd cultural traditions suggest that observing behavior before action is a method of discernment, a strategy passed through generations to ensure thoughtful response. People still debate its ethical value, but its effectiveness is undeniable. I rise, walking deliberately into the kitchen, letting my presence register. My daughter-in-law notices, and for the first time, her smirk falters. There's a subtle shift in the air, almost imperceptible yet unmistakable acknowledgement of agency recognition that the rules are not entirely hers to enforce. I smile faintly, letting the moment stretch. Humor, a vital tool in maintaining composure, flits through my mind. One joke about the cat judging both of us silently. A second, imagining the family photograph restored with my image subtly glowing. And a third about how minor gestures now carry weight like chess moves on a board I control. Dinner preparations begin quietly, the usual flurry of utensils and dishes. I notice the deliberate alignment of plates, the subtle positioning of cutlery, family rituals that in ordinary contexts seem mundane. But in moments like these are indicators of hierarchy and attention. People still debate whether subtle rituals reinforce or challenge power structures, and tonight they serve both purposes. I move with purpose, arranging my own plate, aligning my utensils, a small, silent assertion of order. The cat watches from the counter, an ever-present judgmental observer. As the family gathers, conversation flows around trivial matters, yet each word carries the weight of history, assumption, and silent contest. I observe, note, and calculate. Subtle jabs, half-smiles, and casual references to accounts or properties float in the air intended to intimidate or confuse. I respond with calm, measured comments referencing past events, family traditions, and the occasional anecdote. Each utterance is carefully chosen, balancing assertiveness with neutrality. Odd inheritance customs once required heirs to demonstrate knowledge of family history as a prerequisite for receiving assets. People still debate whether this is fair or manipulative. Tonight, I apply the principle instinctively. During dinner, I strategically reference a minor property dispute from years ago, noting casually how the ledger and letter from my late spouse clarify entitlements. The effect is immediate. Subtle shifts in posture, quick glances exchanged between family members, the slight tension in my daughter-in-law's jaw, all indicators of acknowledgement. Observation confirms that the power balance has shifted incrementally, and the silent clause embedded in the will now begins to assert itself through awareness rather than overt confrontation. Humor returns. I imagine a subtle scoreboard keeping track of reactions, the cat as arbiter, and a future photograph in which the hierarchy is unmistakably rebalanced. After the meal, I rise with deliberate calm, arranging the dishes with precision. The family begins to disperse small talk, masking the unspoken realization of change. I glance at the ledger, comparing notes with observations from the dinner. Each nod, glance, and gesture has reinforced the clause's influence, validating its design. Oddly, some anthropologists note that physical positioning during meals, who serves first, who speaks last, can subtly encode authority, a practice seen in various cultures. People still debate the magnitude of this effect, but tonight it is tangible. Later, I retreat to the study, opening the folder containing the late spouse's letter once more. I reread passages emphasizing moral conduct, attentiveness, and fairness. The writing resonates not just legally but psychologically, offering guidance on the navigation of familial relations, subtle influence, and strategic patience. The combination of legal leverage, moral foresight, and observational acuity provides a framework not only for inheritance, but for restoring respect and acknowledgement. Humor once more punctuates the thought, imagining my daughter-in-law consulting an invisible instruction manual. She doesn't have the cat rolling its eyes, and my quiet smirk marking the first victory of subtle strategy. I plan the next moves with meticulous care, which documents to reveal when to reference the hidden letter and how to maintain calm while asserting influence. Timing is crucial. Premature action could undermine subtle leverage, while delayed response might allow misinterpretations to solidify. People still debate whether proactive disclosure or strategic patience yields better outcomes in family inheritance disputes. Tonight, I know the answer is balance. Observation, knowledge, and timing are my tools. As night falls, I sit back in the study chair, the documents aligned, the ledger open, and the letter positioned strategically. I feel a quiet satisfaction, the realization that the secret clause, once obscure, now directs not only the inheritance, but the behavior and acknowledgement of the family. The photograph may still hang on the wall, but the narrative it represents has shifted awareness, and subtle strategy have restored agency. Humor lingers, a final joke about the cat annotating the ledger, a mental image of the family realizing the shift, and a soft smile for myself, the unseen orchestrator of change. The morning light filters through the curtains, soft and golden, casting long shadows across the living room where the drama has quietly unfolded over the past weeks. I wake with a sense of resolve, an understanding that the moment for confrontation, revelation, and subtle reclamation of power is at hand. The secret clause, the hidden letters, the ledger, and the carefully documented observations all converge in my mind as a cohesive strategy. Today is not about anger or revenge. It is about measured assertion, clarity, and the quiet enforcement of long-overlooked respect. People still debate whether patience or bold action is more effective in resolving family power struggles, but tonight I intend to merge both with precision. I prepare the morning coffee with deliberate calm, letting the aroma ground me in the reality of the day ahead. Each sip is a small ritual, reinforcing mindfulness and presence. I glance toward the photograph once more, the one that excluded me, and imagine the scene of future acknowledgement, the subtle recognition of agency that has been quietly brewing. Humor, a constant ally in maintaining perspective, flits across my mind. One joke about the cat acting as a silent witness, another imagining my daughter-in-law finally realizing the depth of knowledge I possess, and a third picturing a future photograph where my presence cannot be overlooked. Even small levity sustains clarity in complex dynamics. I gather the documents, letters, ledger, legal papers, and notes, aligning them neatly on the desk. The clause in the will, once obscure, now appears as a precise instrument of influence. I reread passages that emphasize moral discretion, attentiveness, and fairness, recognizing how foresight and subtle conditioning intertwine. Anthropologists note that coded messages, conditional inheritances, and moral clauses were historically employed to guide heirs across generations. People still debate whether these measures were ethical or manipulative, yet in practice they establish frameworks of responsibility and influence that endure. Tonight I wield these instruments strategically, blending law, psychology, and foresight. The family begins to gather unaware of the full extent of knowledge I now command. I watch from the study doorway as microsignals ripple across the room, gestures, glances, and subtle postures communicating awareness, alliance, and tension. Observation confirms what I have long suspected: the family has underestimated my capacity to integrate insight, patience, and strategy. Oddly small details like the alignment of cutlery seating positions or the subtle direction of gaze mirror traditional practices used to communicate hierarchy, recognition, and authority silently. People still debate whether these cues hold measurable power in contemporary domestic settings, but tonight they are palpable. I enter the room calmly, positioning myself with deliberate intent. Each step, each gesture is calculated. I let my presence register before speaking. Conversation begins with innocuous topics, weekend plans, trivial household updates, and light commentary on the morning routine. Yet beneath the surface, subtle cues are being assessed: who reacts first, who hesitates, whose expression shifts. Social psychologists note that micro-reactions often reveal unspoken alliances and perceived hierarchies. People still debate the degree of conscious manipulation versus instinctive response. But tonight I can see both at work. With measured timing, I introduce a topic directly connected to the inheritance and hidden clause. I reference a minor property dispute carefully, noting the documents, letters, and legal precedents supporting my claim. Reactions ripple subtly through the room. Brief glances exchange slight shifts in posture and micro-expressions betraying surprise or concern. Humor again softens the tension, a mental quip about the cat perched silently on the desk, observing judgmentally. A second imagining my daughter-in-law trying to recast her assumptions. A third visualizing the subtle recalibration of family power in photographs, conversations, and future gatherings. The clause itself becomes a silent agent in the conversation, its existence influencing responses without overt discussion. I weave references to prior events, overlooked birthdays, the photograph whispered conversations into dialogue with precision, subtly signaling awareness and insight. The family begins to adjust consciously, or not, to the revelation of knowledge I embody. Odd cultural practices suggest that moral discretion and attentiveness clauses often serve dual purposes, reinforcing ethical behavior while preserving family cohesion. People still debate whether such measures succeed more psychologically or legally, but tonight they function flawlessly in both domains. Dinner progresses, the air thick with tension and subtle recalibration. Each word, gesture, and pause is observed, analyzed, and integrated into my mental strategy. I allow moments of silence to accentuate presence, demonstrating awareness without confrontation. Scholars note that in complex family systems, quiet observation and timing often exert more influence than direct challenge. Humor provides a cushion, imagining subtle scoreboard metrics in my mind, the cat as arbiter, and hypothetical photographs where power dynamics are subtly shifted in my favor. These internal jokes maintain composure and perspective. As dessert arrives, I make a deliberate comment referencing a detail from the letter or ledger, careful not to overstate, but precise enough to signal understanding. The reaction is immediate, small shifts in demeanor, microtensions, and fleeting expressions that indicate recognition of previously overlooked knowledge. Observation confirms the influence of the secret clause, not as an abstract legal artifact, but as a living agent shaping awareness, expectation, and behavior. Oddly, in some historical contexts, conditional inheritances required heirs to demonstrate attentiveness, foresight, and moral integrity. People still debate the fairness of such methods, but tonight I see their full effect. After the meal, I rise deliberately, moving to the study with calm authority. Each family member's gaze follows, subtly acknowledging presence without confrontation. I organize the documents once more, aligning letters, ledger entries, and legal papers to reinforce my internal strategy. Humor again tempers the intensity, picturing the cat annotating the ledger, imagining the family recalibrating their assumptions, and envisioning future moments where my awareness commands subtle recognition. Observation, knowledge, and strategic timing converge to assert authority without overt challenge, illustrating a delicate balance of psychological and practical power. Finally, I sit back in the study chair, reflecting on the evolution of the situation from photograph erasure to subtle confrontations, from overlooked birthdays to legal awareness, and from whispered conversations to calculated acknowledgement. The secret clause, once obscure, has been activated not through overt conflict, but through careful observation, insight, and strategic positioning. Humor, reflection, and foresight combine to solidify my agency. People still debate whether subtlety or direct action exerts greater influence in family dynamics, but tonight I have demonstrated the power of both in harmony. I look around the study documents, aligned ledger open letters in place, and feel a profound sense of quiet triumph. The photograph on the wall may still exist, but the narrative it represents has shifted. Agency, awareness, and strategic insight now define presence. Humor, patience, and timing have converted a moment of exclusion into enduring influence. The cat's silent gaze seems almost approving, as if acknowledging the orchestration that has quietly reclaimed respect and recognition. This is the culmination of knowledge applied with care, strategy informed by history, and patience tempered with subtle assertion. The house is quiet now, the soft hum of the ceiling fan blending with the distant evening sounds of the neighborhood. I sit back in the study chair, the documents align neatly before me, and allow the tension to dissolve gently, like fog lifting from a morning field. The photograph, once a symbol of exclusion, now serves as a quiet reminder that agency is never fully erased when knowledge, patience, and subtle strategy are present. Every detail, the hidden letter, the ledger, the secret clause, has converged to create a balance that is both satisfying and lasting. Humor, reflection, and observation have carried me through a silent companion to resilience. I think about the family members, their gestures, glances, and subtle acknowledgments during the past days. The power they assumed was theirs has shifted not with confrontation or anger, but through deliberate awareness, timing, and understanding. Odd historical practices, moral clauses, and coded instructions that seemed archaic now reveal their enduring influence. People still debate whether these mechanisms are ethical or manipulative, yet in practice they maintain order, accountability, and tonight fairness. The subtlety of strategy combined with patience and quiet observation proves far more effective than overt assertion. And so, as the evening darkens outside and the house settles into stillness, I feel a profound sense of completion. What was once erased is now recognized. What was overlooked is now acknowledged. Humor lingers softly, a reminder that levity and perspective sustain resilience. The cat watches silently, witness to the quiet reclamation of authority, respect, and subtle victory. To all subscribers and supporters of the channel, thank you for following these stories of quiet strength and observation. Remember, in life, patience, knowledge, and subtlety often achieve what force cannot. Good night. Let the house breathe, let the tension fade, and carry forward the lessons of observation, strategy, and gentle triumph.